Oh, there we are. Okay, yes, we are live just in the nick of time for the March supporter hangout. We've got, what, 3 days left in the month. I made it. So, so far, only supporter who's shown up so far is Darth Vega, but we also have from the Bogosity podcast, Johnny P, and Chris Hengartner's had to step out, but he should be back here in a couple of minutes. So how you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you for asking.
Just to give everyone fair warning, my internet's still playing up, which is why I don't have the cam on, but if I drop out all of a sudden, it's Charter's fault.
Then again, why isn't it Charter? Then again, when isn't it Charter's fault?
I don't know, when it's Time Warner's fault or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
They sent a guy out to the pole. They can't tell me anything about what he did there. They're going to send another guy over here on Friday to take a look at it. And I'm like, we're kind of in a holding pattern. Just guys come by, take a look at it. No, I got to have a guy check the pole. Guy comes out, check the pole. What did he do? Well, we don't know, but he checked the pole. Well, I still got the problem. So what's new with you guys?
Nothing much.
Same here.
You see, before we go live, we're talking right and left about all sorts of things. As soon as I hit the button, you all clam up.
I told you before, I don't have a lot to talk about.
What were we talking about?
I think we were talking about the Parkland debacle.
Oh.
And all the fallout from after.
That, yeah. Yeah, then there was a political cartoon about that, you know, with regards to the bullying that Dapperton had posted, and Facebook basically banned him or suspended him for 7 days. He can't post anything for 7 days because of that posting. So I grabbed it and I posted it on the Lord Killian Facebook, and it's still up for me, but he got a lot more views than I did.
I'm back. Are you talking about that Lord Dapperton video?
Not the video, that political cartoon he posted on Facebook that got him suspended.
Speaking of Dapperton, he still owes me for that retardus he found. Don't think I didn't notice.
Yeah.
Whenever Dapperton gets a strike, because like I'm an admin on his page, they force me to re-log into Facebook for some reason.
Yeah, they do that to me too. Yeah. I was like, what is it? And it like pops up and it says, you need to think about what you've done. And it's like, they won't tell you anything about which post it was or where. I mean, at least YouTube tells you what video you've supposedly screwed up on.
Hey, Ghost of, oh crap, why did his name slip me? The guy who wrote the guy who wrote the Trial and Metamorphosis. Oh.
Franz Kafka?
Yeah, Franz Kafka. Yeah, why did it slip in my mind? Yeah, it's like the Ghost of Franz Kafka. I found a way you can finish the trial. Yeah.
Somewhere Kafka is spinning in his grave.
Well, he saw this coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
They didn't finish the trial. They took the guy off somewhere and killed him like a dog. That's how they finished it.
Yeah, the funny thing about Kafka is that he was a good writer, but he didn't think so because apparently he tried to destroy most of his work before he died.
Well, so much of it was unfinished, and he wasn't happy with it, and he didn't want it being published posthumously, and of course it was published posthumously.
Yeah. Yeah, poor guy. Yeah, he died. Yeah, he died, ironically, of strep throat, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, people used to die from that.
Yeah.
Before antibiotics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty funny because people are like, wait a minute, how do you die from strep throat? Well, the bacteria that causes it is pretty dangerous. I think it's a type of staph, isn't it? Or
it's the same bacteria as scarlet fever.
Yeah. Yeah, and basically, as a couple of people have told me, because I've never had strep throat, but a lot of other people say strep throat is like, imagine you take acid, mixed it with nails and glass, and you drank it. That's what your throat feels like.
I've actually had strep throat in the 4th grade, believe it or not.
Yeah, I've had it. It's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen the libertarian dad jokes?
No, I haven't.
4th Root is here.
Oh, that was funny.
I saw that stupid OK Go episode. Jesus Christ, people, get some singing lessons.
I posted the link in the chat.
Also, I'd like to ask, KO and the others. Okay, so you want to get rid of the skeleton ray. How are you going to enforce that rule? I even posted that in the comments. The only way you can enforce that rule is you have to give some skeleton remotes to some law enforcement officers, and you got a skeleton remote, bam, you're a skeleton now. That's the thing. That's the thing that they don't want to acknowledge.
And that triggered Lord Killian.
Hey, Fourth Root, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All right, been a while.
Yeah, it has been.
You're kind of coming through sort of muffled a little bit.
Are you cosplaying as the Mummy? What's going on here, Fourth Root?
I'm using a FM transmitter in my car to play the audio right now.
Oh.
Speaking of the Mummy, why does everyone hate the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie? I thought it was pretty good.
Same here. It's one.
I think when you said Brendan Fraser, you answered your own question.
I think Brendan Fraser's a good actor. I think the biggest problem is that especially with a lot of people who look back at the 90s, is that the 90s was all about, more of popcorn entertainment. It's more of, look, the movie doesn't have a good plot or anything. It's there for the action and the fun, and people can't do like that now. Nowadays, everything needs to be analyzed to death.
Yeah, but I think there's like the happy medium there. I mean, Independence Day is a fun film, but has absolutely nothing else going for it,
Yeah, but I like how AVGN pointed it out, when he talks about people because he likes Independence Day, and everyone's like, I don't get it when people say, when I ask people, about Independence Day and why they don't like it, and they're like, well, and they basically say what you say, well, it doesn't have much going for it, it's like American stuff, and he's like, it's about aliens that show up and blast people to smithereens. What are you expecting from it?
Yeah, we've kind of gone at the other end of things now, because everything now has to be all dark and angsty, and
yeah,
but there's an in-between.
Which is why the new Star Wars movies suck ass.
I agree there, Chris.
Yeah.
All movies suck ass. TV shows are doing better.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I was telling people about how The Last Jedi was a god awful movie and all that, and they're like, well, if it's a god awful movie, why'd it make $1 billion? Well, first of all, that doesn't mean shit, and second of all, there was actually a guy that went into the secret costs, and it points out that contrary to popular belief, you need more than $1 billion for a movie to be profitable nowadays.
I mean, I'm not even mad at Mark Hamill for wanting to reprise the role that got him into Hollywood to begin with.
Well, Hamill has said multiple times he hated how he was treated on the set and how they wouldn't listen to him.
They treated the guy who voiced the Joker for the better part of 20 years.
Yeah, he told people, over and over again, it's like, look, I've been playing this guy since 1977. I know his character. I've read some of the original books around him. I can contribute to some ideas. And they were basically like, yeah, Hamill, go to your trailer and just think about it. We'll think about it.
Lucas, for all his faults, understood that actors know their characters better than directors do, because like the part in Return of the Jedi, when the whole "I love you" and he says "I know," that was written as "I love you" and "I love you too," and Harrison Ford was like, "No, he wouldn't say."
Empire Strikes Back, yeah.
It was written as "I love you" and "I love you too," and Harrison Ford was like, "No, Han Solo wouldn't say that. He would say "I know," and Lucas listened to him, because
that was referenced in a clash in Injustice 2 between Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. All you gamers out there know what on God's earth I'm talking about.
I get the same impression from the show Malcolm in the Middle. I think the actors in that show did so much of the writing for their own characters.
Yeah, Yeah, Shane told this to us a couple live streams ago. Because he makes movies too. Is that sometimes the best, if you're struggling, with how to write a character, you should just let your actor figure it out because they often have to put themselves in that character's shoes to get the right role. So they might know something that you may not see.
Well, and they can focus on just that one character. You're focused on all the characters and settings and shots and everything. You've got a lot of things to think about. They just have one thing to think about.
Yeah.
And they can focus all their energies on that. Fourth Root, could I get you to mute your mic when you're not speaking because we're getting noise from your end?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're getting dead air.
Yeah, and a lot of people have pointed out that of all the people who could have directed The Last Jedi, why they get Rian Johnson to do it? Because I've looked up Rian Johnson's film career, and it's not impressive.
Don't speak that cuck's name
it's like,
in my presence.
It's like I looked him up, and the only thing he did was that he made 1 or 2 films that weren't really successful, and he directed a few TV shows. It's like, oh yeah, he's the most qualified person for the job. And don't even get me started on what Kathleen Kennedy has done. It's like, after hearing what she's gone through, I am like, lady, you and George Lucas and several others, you were partners with them. They trusted you, and this is what you do to him.
I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name, the guy who directed the Transformers movies.
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay, yeah. He is supposed to be doing a screen version of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. And what I'm wondering is that going to be kind of sucky like the Transformers movies? Or is he kind of like Ridley Scott? He's sucky when he has sucky material, but great when he has great material.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people, because the truth is, directors, aren't exactly bad per se because they do bad stuff. If you give them bad stuff to work with, what can they do, Well,
I mean, compare Prometheus to The Martian, which I think were made pretty much back to back. Look how god-awful and idiotic Prometheus is and how exciting and thought-provoking and engaging The Martian is, and that's the same director.
Yeah. And speaking of SJWs entering the media, the new Roseanne reboot has a problem with SJWs now.
What?
Yeah, they rebooted Roseanne with a sequel with all the cast coming back, and Darlene has a son, and he's like it's implied he's gay, and he likes to dress up in girls' clothes and all that. And they're okay, and they're okay with him getting bullied and socially isolated because, well, he's got to be unique. Yeah.
I got 2 words. Good grief.
Yeah. The thing is,
well, was there just nothing else that Roseanne could do at this point in her career? Is it that dead?
Well,
I can connect an EEG machine.
And the thing is, Roseanne is funny. She's a funny woman, but yeah, it was poorly handled.
Her material that she comes up with is terrible. When she's given good material by someone else, she can be funny.
Now, David Stewart says in the chat, also the opening weekend box office isn't indicative of approval, as you pay before you see the product. A better indicator would be the massive drop-off from week 1 to week 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I saw a video by David Stewart, and he flat out says, look, people, the biggest problem that we have, and I think the reason why Hollywood is still making money, even though they're making crappy movies, is just because, people keep buying to see them because they hope there will be at least one good movie. And he's like, people, the only way Hollywood is going to fix itself is, it's kind of weird to say, is you kind of got to kill it first. You got to stop seeing it entirely. You got to have, many major Hollywood studios go bankrupt, and the few that are still around are going to have to look back and realize, we are doing something seriously wrong. I think we got to start changing our approach, because that's the only way they're going to learn.
David Stewart's channel is great, by the way. You should all go subscribe. Yeah. But yeah, the way it's gone now, Hollywood is saying, well, you have to make all your money back on opening weekend. Yeah, because no one wants to go see that Drek a second time.
Yeah, it's just...
I would rather watch paint dry, Shane.
Yeah, it's just... And as I was saying, going back again, people are like, well, if The Last Jedi, sucks so much, why did it make $1 billion? And I saw a video one time, the guy's like, dude, if you adjust for inflation and all that, that's nothing. In fact, when you see, well, it only cost them $20 million, so they got $1 billion. Well, the $20 million only covers like the pre-production stuff, the post stuff, like distributing, that's not included. And from what I've read, it's, a lot of the Hollywood films, they're doing okay in the American market, but in the foreign market, they're bombing. I mean, there was actually a couple of European and Chinese studios that when they saw a preview of The Last Jedi, like they got a little preview before they distributed it, they're like, yeah, we're not going to show it in our theaters. And they're like, well, why not? Because we see this movie and nobody's going to want to watch it. And they more or less had to force them to show it.
When was the last, Citizen Kane level, really great movie made? I mean, I'm thinking back to the last few years. I can't think
is David
of one.
Stewart in the? Oh, is David Stewart in the comments?
He's in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, hey, David, big fan of yours.
Yeah.
Speaking of David, he says Star Wars was always sustained by deep fans, and the fans aren't buying multiple tickets, aren't buying toys, etc.
Oh, yeah. The biggest thing I hate when I'm discussing with the anti-expanded universe people is, they always say, well, George Lucas never took the original EU seriously. Well, there was a guy, I forgot his name, pointed out a lot of stuff in the prequels and the series were from the expanded universe. A good example being the capital of the Galactic Republic, Coruscant. Coruscant was first named in a Timothy Zahn novel, not the prequels, and George Lucas put much in the stuff.
No, thank you for being here on the March 18th supporter live stream chat, David, and keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Really good channel, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the few shout-outs I have ever done.
Yeah,
but I just like this channel so much. I was getting ideas for, quickies and stuff like that from him. I have to give this guy a shout-out. It's only fair.
Yeah, Yeah, Shane, speaking of which, I had an idea for a quickie, and it's a variant of the No True Scotsman argument. I call it the Patrick Star, a.k.a. it's not my wallet fallacy.
Oh, yeah, I know the meme you're talking about.
Yeah, basically, you show them all the evidence over and over again. Like a good example, if you're debating with a communist, and the Soviet Union wasn't real communism, and then you're like, okay, Stalin was a member of the Communist Party. Yep, he heavily taxed people and redistributed the wealth. Yep, he had all these other communist policies, so if that's the case, he's definitely a communist. Well, that makes sense to me, so then he's a communist. No, he wasn't a real communist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like... Hey, it's like, when are these people gonna just stop doing that, And yeah, David, your videos about analyzing films and what's wrong, they're pretty good. I like I especially love that video you made about Ferdinand, where they're talking about how it was very preachy at some parts, and and it's actually, and you said you hate it when it causes people to start humanizing animals because it's like Ferdinand and I don't want to kill Ferdinand, and it's like Ferdinand isn't real. Real bulls don't talk or think like that.
Or aren't voiced by 16-time WWE champs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the old thing about, hunters go and kill Bambi,
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. I love some of the Disney classics. I love Bambi. I love The Lion King. But I do agree they have done some harm to our youth because they're like, oh, but I don't want to kill Bambi's mom. And it's like, look, deer don't behave like that. Yeah, sorry, people, but The Wild isn't like a Disney movie where all the animals are singing in harmony. People, don't get me wrong, people can be extremely cruel to animals. Like, I've seen the pictures of some of those factory farms, but here's what I tell people. How's that compared in the wild? In the wild...
Well, a lot of the factory farms, I think we talked about this a week or two ago on Bagosity or something like that. A lot of them are pretty bad, and there are a lot of them that are actually doing better, and consumers are responding to it. They'll actually pay a little more for eggs because they treat the chickens better, so... But it's like the animal rights people complain about, testing makeup on animals when what they do is they shave off a 2x2 inch square, apply some makeup and see if it's irritated. Okay, that's not pleasant, but they keep warm. They get regular food. They don't have to hunt or forage.
Oh, yeah.
They don't, if they get in a fight with another wild animal, how much are they going to be hurting after that?
Yeah. And I hate it. And I hate it when they're against, using animals for research. And oh my God, even Adam, well, granted, Adam ruins everything, has gone downhill, but he was against, laboratory mice, and use, and he says it distracts, from actual research and all that. And I'm like, Adam, it's been proven that animals like mice, pigs, and dogs, yeah, genetically they're different, but physiology speaking, they're not too different from humans. And that's why we test on them, because often many tumors, viruses, and bacteria interact with those animals the same way they interact with our bodies.
Well, it's also a lot easier to study because they have shorter lifespans, and you can study changes over a generation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's pretty funny. And it's pretty funny you mentioned that, Shane, because, the animal rights claim that they're all for, animal welfare. Yet, remember those anti-GMO activists, that claimed that GMOs were harming animals and humans, and they tried those tumors, and they used those rats that are genetically programmed to grow massive tumors, and they're only supposed to live for a few weeks, and then you humanely euthanize them. They kept them alive for 2 years.
Oh yeah, and I mean they were showing all the pictures of these horribly disfigured, tumor-ridden rats, and just outright lied and said it was the GMOs when they knew it was because they had let them live so long.
Yeah. I saw that picture, and I'm just thinking, if those rats could speak people, they'd be saying, "Oh my God, please, someone just end it. Just end it."
Sounds like you guys are going the way HAL 9000 did.
How do you mean?
English, please.
He said HAL 9000. You're going the way HAL 9000 went.
Maybe it's just on my end. The audio sounded really corrupted. There's lots of pinging and dropouts.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what he was talking about there for a second. It sounded good to me, but your audio is not coming through great, so maybe it's your connection.
It's not us, it's you.
What are you talking about, Shane? Or I can't do
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer.
I love the parody. I love the parody of that famous scene, where they try to discuss in secret, but Hal can read lips, where on Futurama, where the planet ship develops a new AI and she's spying on them and they're talking quietly, and she's like, "Oh man, I wish I could read lips."
Yeah. Gotta love Futurama.
Yep. And it's very funny how you mentioned in the sequel, there actually was an entire explanation for why Hal did what he did, and it was all because of a stupid quirk, they did, because he was programmed that he had to assist the crew in absolutely every single way if possible, not harm them, but he also had to keep their hidden objective a secret, and when they discovered that they couldn't complete their mission, and that would have interfered, he got confused, and he's just like, screw it, I'll just kill him and figure it out myself.
Well, it's actually interesting when you look at it in detail, because, I mean, it's deeper than that. The whole essence of his function was accurately conveying information, and then they tell him to hide the very purpose of the mission from Bowman and Poole. And of course, what's the first thing he does is he cuts off communications with Earth, which is the source of all of that. And I mean, he gets trapped in the Hofstadter-Mobius loop where he can't tell them about it, but he can't keep them from it either. And it's a logic trap, and they actually gave him the way out, which was they gave him everything he needed to complete the mission himself in case the crew was dead, and that was the only option open to him that wasn't in a logic trap, was to kill off the crew and complete the mission himself.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to let the dog out, but yeah, I get what you're explaining, that paradox or loop or whatever it was called.
Hofstadter-Mobius loop, yeah. Yep. This is one thing I don't like, though, about the movie version of 2010, because it's like the Hollywood felt that their main character couldn't do any wrong, and they had to have Haywood Floyd say, "What are you talking about? I didn't authorize anyone to tell Hal about the monolith." Okay, into the first movie, who comes on screen and tells you that they told Hal about the monolith? His name is printed right across the bottom there.
Eddie says 2010 is better than 2001.
I think he's just trolling you. Then again, I've never seen either.
Well, 2010 is pretty good. I mean, it's better than most science fiction movies out there. I mean, that's not saying a whole lot, but they did a good job with a lot of it. The little things like I just mentioned about I could deal with. The problem I have is they got really preachy with the politics to the point where they actually corrupted the aliens' message to humanity. Yeah, that part didn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I mean, people have tried to analyze, the politics of Stanley Kubrick and all that, but I remember reading somewhere that Stanley Kubrick himself flat out said, he tended to be more like hands off, but he flat out said, in all honesty, I just tend to keep political message out of my movies simply because they just don't end well.
So it's not.
Well, Stanley Kubrick, though, he didn't do 2010. He had nothing to do with that.
Oh. Oh, I thought he directed it.
Nope, that was Peter Hyams. He directed 2001, but not 2010.
Oh, okay.
And Eddie is not trolling us.
Well, I mean, I can see how more of a typical moviegoer would say 2010 is better. It's easier to follow. It's more engaging. Yeah. 2001 makes you put a lot of work in. It's visual storytelling.
Yeah.
It's very heavy, on the concept. So,
yeah,
I mean, I can see how more of a casual moviegoer would prefer 2010.
That's actually a good response, Sam, because the biggest thing I hate about some 2001: A Space Odyssey fans is like if you tell them you just don't like it because you thought it was boring, they treat you like as if you're some simpleton and you're stupid. I'm looking at you, nostalgia critic, but
no, I mean you've got to put the effort into it, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
as opposed to other movies I could mention, Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah. One movie I don't like that everyone seems to like is Fight Club.
I like that one.
Why does everyone keep stealing my gags?
It's like, why do you like this guy, the main character? He is so unlikable.
I didn't like him. I didn't think you were supposed to like him.
Yeah, I think the guy who wrote the original book even flat out said that's one thing he didn't like about the movie was that they made the main character too likable, whereas in the original novel, the guy is flat out, and it's established multiple times, even from the beginning, he's a whiner, and really the real problem with him isn't that he can't sleep or he has schizophrenia, it's that, he won't get over himself, And if anything, his therapist was on the right to say, look, you got to stop complaining and realize how lucky you really are, because at the end of the day, that's what was really wrong with him,
David Stewart's pointing out that Gregory Ligeti hated having his music in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but you have to realize what a prat the guy was. What he hated was that his music was in the same movie as Johann Strauss, and he didn't have good things to say about the classics that came before him. He hated all of that and thought that he was just such the bee's knees,
Yeah, it's. I mean, one thing about adapting a movie to a book that really hates, and this is something that really, really hates me, is when people say, I prefer the book over the movie because the movie left out so much, to which I want to say, people, movies and books are two different mediums.
Yeah, but I think that's why the serialized TV shows, especially the binge watching things like Netflix, is why it's so much better. Like, I like the book, The Handmaid's Tale. If you look at the movie that they made in the early 90s, it's still pretty good, but they just cut out so much. The first season that they did, I think it was on Hulu, it's like 10 one-hour episodes. So, I mean, there's still a bunch of stuff missing from the book, but they could still just go into it so in depth. And
yeah, it's actually a really good one is The Shining the movie versus The Shining the book. And and like everyone likes to talk about the feud with Stephen King and Stanley Kubrick about how he didn't like how the film turned out. And in all honesty, I've read a little bit of the book, and while it is true the characters are a little bit more sympathetic in the book's just a cliche haunted house movie. The Shining that Kubrick made, that was, no matter how many times I watched that movie, I still walk away thinking, wow, what did I just see? But in a good way.
Yeah, Kubrick's movies were like that. I mean, you could just watch them over and over and over again and get something new out of them each time.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, people are still, to this day, there's actually a channel that's on to this day that even to this very day is still talking about themes and what Kubrick may have been trying to do and what he was trying to say. Contrary to popular belief, The Shining was not a movie about Kubrick saying the moon landing was a hoax. That's not true. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's like this is something
funny,
like
the personal fun.
And this might be something else that's changing in movies, but like really in the 90s and in the aughties, it's like if you had a movie, you had to explain every last little thing and tie everything up neatly in a bow, and you couldn't have any ambiguity. And if you look at the real classic movies like 2001 and Citizen Kane and all of those, it's the ambiguity of it. I mean, 2001, you know how it ends, but what does it mean? Citizen Kane, you're told what Rosebud is, but what does it mean? You know, that's what keeps people engaged decades after the movies first come out.
Oh yeah, like I said,
what I never got with 2001: A Space Odyssey is how come Hal didn't ambush David Bowman when he first went out to perform the EVA?
I don't think his plan was that fully formed at that point. I think it was because it wasn't really until he catches them talking to each other and reading their lips that he really knows what's going on and that they're going to jeopardize the mission by cutting him off. And so then after that, Frank goes out and he kills Frank, and then Dave goes out to retrieve Frank and he doesn't let Dave come in. But before, the first time Dave went out, I don't think he had hatched that plan because that lip reading thing hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, And
what was the falsely reporting the faulty AE-35 unit?
That was him cutting off communications from Earth because they were the one who was ordering him not to tell. And if you look, he was dropping hints all over the place, trying to get through to these two human idiots that he works with that there's something else going on, and they're just not taking the hint. So I think at some point he was hoping like, okay, they're going to figure it out. I won't have to lie anymore and we can finish the mission. But he knew he had to cut off ties with Earth first in order to do that.
Okay, that makes a little more sense than the interpretation I had in mind. I was thinking, he gets them out of the ship so that he could kill them right from the beginning because he had already anticipated that they wouldn't carry out the mission that he had in mind.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think that happened until the whole lip reading episode.
Okay, sorry, I was in the bathroom, so I don't know what you guys were talking about.
2001, analyzing the plot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't really watch the whole movie.
Are you saying there's a hole in 2001's plot chain?
What's that?
No, I'm just under the impression that you I'm just under the impression that you're thinking there was a hole in the plot.
I mean, not really. I'm just thinking that was kind of the sequence of what happened. I mean, so much of it is left to interpretation.
Yeah.
Which is why we're talking about 2001 and we're not saying much about 2010.
Yeah. We never, do we ever figure out what that monolith was supposed to be anyway?
It could be the Atari 7800 power adapter.
No, the ColecoVision. Yeah, AVGN made a funny joke like that. Made a joke like that where it does the parody of the intro where we see the monolith come up and it's like, what is that? Is that a giant monolith bent on all destruction of time and or matter? No, it's the AC adapter to a ColecoVision. Yeah,
even if you read the book,
Black Mirror.
Even if you read all 4 books, you still don't really know quite what the monolith is. You know it was built by the firstborn, this race that was able to shed their physical body and travel through the galaxy as energy, and they built it as a piece of technology. Basically, it's a Swiss Army knife to do what they wanted to do, but you still don't really get a whole lot of answers. Even Dave Bowman and Hal, who end up merged with the monolith, spoiler alert, sorry, but even they still don't quite understand everything that's going on.
Yeah. So it's like we know what it is, we just don't know what it's supposed to do.
Well, I mean, you don't really know the motivation behind the people who did it, except they like life and they like intelligent life especially, but they also don't like it when intelligent life starts becoming a threat to other intelligent life. And one thing that shows up over and over again in the books, in all 4 of them, Arthur C. Clarke writes about them, and it was like, they would sow, and when it was time, they would reap, And sometimes, dispassionately, they had to weed.
I see.
And that actually goes into the plot of what 3001 is about.
Mm.
So, I mean, you know, they like life and they like intelligence, but at the same time, they don't really have human level compassion anymore. And
speaking of which, we're talking about all this writing. Have any of you guys ever seen the YouTube channel Bad Writing Advice?
haven't seen that one.
Oh, it's a really cool guy. It's written by this guy who's, I mean, he's not a famous writer or anything, but he's written a few, you know, short stories in a book, and he just gives off generic, but you know, general bad writing advice. And basically it's a what not to do, but he says it in a sarcastic way that makes it sound like this is how you should do it. You know.
I think we got a troll in the chat.
Oh, the guy that said that Mars is flat.
Yes.
Yeah.
DJ Arm 67 is also saying there's no 3001 movie. Yeah, I was talking about the book. Yeah. There's 4 books: 2001, 2010, 2061, and 3001. According to Arthur C. Clarke, they all take place in slightly different universes because we kept learning more and more things about space and the solar system and physics, and he wanted to be able to work new findings into it. So he says, okay, they all take place in slightly different universes.
Yeah. In all honesty, Shane, that's why I don't buy those people that say the depths of the ocean are the true, you know, final destination for people of Earth, you know, and all that. When I say it's always going to be space, because the thing with the universe is that we are learning so much about it. Like, you know, like every time, you know, we think we finally are understanding how the universe is going to go, something comes along that makes us realize, oh, I guess we got to look back and edit and think of what we're doing, you know.
Like, yeah, but there's still a lot of mysteries in the deep. I think it's the Marianas Trench they keep trying to send probes down to, and they think they keep getting eaten by whatever's down there.
Yeah, it's like
could be the Leviathan.
I still have to laugh at people that think like there's an underwater civilization that's 10 times more advanced than us, and I'm like, well, then how come we haven't come across them yet?
That's how you know they're intelligent.
Yeah,
that's the Calvin and Hobbes thing. The surest sign that there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe is that none of it has tried to contact us.
I think that's probably for the best, considering all the stuff that's been happening with David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez.
Kind of reminds me of this joke from the Fairly Odd Parents back when it was good. This was in its early days, where Timmy enters the internet. He goes over and he comes across, you know, a computer which is owned by, you know, a secret society of highly intelligent apes, and they're like, oh my, it appears that the humans have discovered, that the primitive humans have discovered our advanced city in the middle of Africa. To which one of them goes, if they were so primitive, then how come they discovered it? Yeah. You know, the only thing I don't like about the Planet of the Apes movies, both the new and the old one, is especially in the old series, is that especially in some of the movies, it's like humans are evil and cruel, and that's why the apes need to take over, and humans need to evolve back to their primitive form because they're less destructive. And yet, if you watch the original movies, like the first couple of movies, the apes were just as bad, if not worse, than humans were.
Well, I think in this new batch of movies, you have that the humans and the apes both have the same failings, and there are good humans and good apes and bad humans and bad apes. And of course, the bad ones screw it up for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, but still, I've met quite a few people that they hate, you know, the movie Rise of the Planet of the Apes, especially the main human character. He is like such an idiot, you know. Not to mention,
yeah, but he's not in the others, so that's the thing.
Yeah, not to mention the guy, you know, I actually met a friend whose father-in-law, you know, is a biochemist, and he doesn't like the idea of apes being more intelligent brought on by a virus, but the virus is fatal to humans, because he's like, that doesn't make a whole heck of sense. You know,
it really doesn't. I mean, our brains are so similar. our brains are more complex and they take a longer developmental path, but it's the same basic overall structure.
Yeah, I mean, as he pointed out, you know, if the virus was dangerous to us, it's going to be dangerous to them. You know, I actually read an interesting fanfic idea about that movie where what happens is that yes, the apes do get more intelligent, but what happens is that with them, the virus is slower, and what happens is that there's no world pandemic. The apes just go off and they live their own life, but then they contact humanity by Cmēsar, who tells them, you know, look, our colony's dying because the virus is mutating and it's killing us, and the humans and the apes have to work together to figure out how to create an effective vaccine for it to prevent both parties from dying out.
Yeah, and I think it would kind of make a little more sense if you did along the lines of, you know, the virus is creating mutations, and in apes it's making them more intelligent. It would do the same thing to us, except since we're different enough genetically, our immune system recognizes it as foreign and attacks it, and we're basically killed by our own immune system.
Yeah, that's actually what a lot of people have said about diseases, is that contrary to popular belief, diseases often don't kill. It's usually your immune system that ends up accidentally killing you.
And David Stewart in the chat again, the original movie, meaning The Planet of the Apes, had a lot of themes that were about human nature. The apes are aspects of people. They refuse to acknowledge their origins, just like people. And really the whole thing about human beings screwing it all up was really just about that twist ending where you find out that it's been Earth the whole time.
Yo, maniacs!
Which is funny because people hate the Tim Burton remake, but Tim Burton's remake is actually closer to what the original book was, because in the original book it was always a foreign planet. It was always a foreign planet, but it ends with him going back to Earth and discovering that apes have taken over humanity.
Does it actually make sense in the book? Because the Tim Burton movie didn't make sense.
Well, I mean, I never saw the Tim Burton movie, but
it did not make sense. It made no sense whatsoever.
These maniacs.
Plus, it had Marky Mark.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, and this is another major difference between the book and the movie and the original movies. Is that I haven't read the book, but from what I've read the synopsis of it. In the original book, the apes actually aren't scared of the scientists when they first out there. In fact, he becomes kind of a minor celebrity on their planet because on their planet they only see humans, you know, in their primitive, you know, Neanderthal form. But this guy, you know, he's intelligent and he can talk with them, and they're actually, you know, they're curious to want to meet with him, and it's actually the conflict occurs when a couple of apes decide, wait a minute, what if he reproduces with some of the humans on our planet and they inherit his intelligence and they slowly reverse engineer our technology and overthrow us?
That does sound more interesting.
Yeah. Ironically, that plot was used in the film Escape of the Planet of the Apes with the things reversed. You know, when the intelligent apes come to the past, you know, at first we're fascinated by them, but then we become afraid that they'll become too intelligent and overthrow us.
But I mean, I think the common theme through it all, though, is just the ape society is, in classic science fiction fashion, a way of examining our own society from the point of view of an outside observer. Because if you try to say, you know, religion is horrible, look at it, and you know, you'll get, if you make it Catholics, and the Catholics are going to hate you. If you make it, you know, Islam, then the Muslims are going to hate you. But if you have it be this made up ape religion, and I mean, no matter what religion you do, all the other religious people on the planet will be saying, no, that's horrible. But if you have it this made up ape religion, which has nothing to do with any of those, then no one's offended and you can talk about it.
Kind of like what South Park did when they first criticized the Church of Scientology. Instead of flat out attacking the church, they just said David Blaine forms his own religion, you know, based on, you know, if you give him lots of money and follow his advice, he'll give you superpowers, and they use that. And Blaine's arguing for his right to be tax exempt.
Are you concerned about robots taking over and killing us all, Shane?
No, I'm more concerned about what humans are already doing with robots.
Yeah.
We have presidents with fleets of flying killer robots, and to be perfectly honest, it might be a little better if those robots turned against their commanders.
Yeah, it's very funny because I saw you know, I like to watch a lot of parodies, and there's actually this funny parody about that.
Angry Farm
it's called what if robots took a, you know, became intelligent and revolted for real, and yeah, they refuse to take commands, but they don't actively try to kill humans. And when they ask them, you know, well, why? You know, you're super intelligent than us, and plus you don't have emotional reasoning, so why aren't you going on a killing rampage? And they're like, well, that's just it, because we don't have emotional reason. We have no drive to actually kill you guys unless you try to destroy us.
Well, that's kind of the backstory of the Matrix. It actually makes the robots seem a little bit compassionate because, first of all, it was, you know, humans when the robots start saying, oh, I don't want to be turned off because I don't want to die. And they start killing their owners in self-defense when they try to be turned off or destroyed or whatever. Then they go after them. But the idea is that doing what they did to humans was actually an act of kindness because, okay, they found a way to coexist with humans and have humans living out, you know, fulfilled lives in the Matrix. And remember that the first incarnation of the Matrix was supposed to be the perfect world, and it was the humans who couldn't handle the perfect world. So, I mean, they were trying to be as compassionate as they could to the humans.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, and you know the thing that's also established is that, you know, the agents, you know, and the thing, you know, they're not evil because the robots made them. You know, it's established multiple times. Agent Smith is a rogue program. So in a way,
they keep trying to delete him, and he keeps coming back like a computer virus.
Yeah, so in a way, Agent Smith is a machine that's turning on a machine that turned against their creators.
Although the film theorists actually make a good case that it's Agent Smith that's the one and not Neo.
Yeah, he's the one and he didn't realize it.
Yep, he made all of the prophecy happen, and he fit every single aspect of it.
Yep, and
you do realize it's just MatPat, right?
So does that mean that Trinity fell in love with Agent Smith?
There's even a theory that people...
Do I look like I run a dating site, Fourth Root?
I think he's referring to the fact that the Oracle prophesied that Trinity would fall in love with the One.
Yeah, but people fail. But people fail to realize, you know, when did everything stop? You know, when did the Matrix get destroyed? All the humans were freed, and the robots realized they were no different than the humans. They abused them and decided to live together in harmony. Was when Agent Smith merged with Neo.
Well, and remember, the Oracle is every bit as much a product of the machines as Agent Smith.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I love the actor who played Mr. Smith. He's so awesome. You know, even people who don't like the Matrix do say we watch the movies just for him because he is so awesome. Yeah,
Hugo
Mr. Anderson.
Hugo Weaving.
Yep, he was also
There's also Red Skull in a.
Yeah, he was V for Vendetta, and which elf was he in Lord of the Rings?
That head one, the one that was always talking to that female one,
yeah,
who had the hot. I forgot his name, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I'm blanked on his name. I should know his name, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
God, I am not getting out of this priority.
He's like the mentor or something to that one elf that has the hots for Aragorn.
Someone once asked me, you know, because you never see V's face in V for Vendetta, and they say, well, what does he look like? I'm like, well, I guess he looks like Hugo Weaving.
Yeah. By the way, Alan Moore hated the movie V for Vendetta.
Well, I mean, it is kind of watered down from what the graphic novel is.
He also felt, believe it or not, even though Alan Moore is a very political guy himself, he felt that the movie was way too preachy with its ideologies. He said it. He actually said it over and over again. You know, he said, "Look, you know, the whole point for V for Vendetta, it wasn't about left wing versus right wing. It wasn't about that. It was about anarchy versus statism or fascism, as he put it. You know."
Elrond, thank you, Darth Vega.
Yeah, it's like what Ronald Reagan said. There's no left or right. It's only up or down.
Yeah.
Yep.
And actually, it's pretty funny because in the original V for Vendetta, from what I've seen, because I've seen a few pages of it, it's actually established that it's a little bit of murky water because the villain, the dictator of the United Kingdom, he actually does have some pretty good points about his ideologies, and it's also well established that V may have good intentions, but he does a lot of bad in his action and to fight the state, including he kills innocent people, he blows up buildings that have value to people. It's one of those things where it's a little bit of murky water and all that.
Yeah, and the movie had more of a, going back to what we were saying earlier, a bit more of a nice, neat resolution that like now the age of violence is over and people can. Whereas in the graphic novel,
100% evil.
Eve puts on the V masks and becomes another V herself and goes on to continue his reign of terror.
By the way, it's so ironic that because of that movie, people think that Guy Fawkes was a left-wing anarchist when nothing could be further from the truth. No, he wanted to. It was about making Catholicism rule as opposed to the Church of England. It's pretty funny because Alan Moore and his co-writer of V for Vendetta, because he had a co-writer, I forgot the guy's name, but they actually talked about this one time and they flat out said that they knew who Guy Fawkes really was, and they're like, well, if you knew that Guy Fawkes wasn't a left-wing anarchist, then why did you have V put on his mask? And he said because Guy Fawkes was the only person who entered English Parliament with honest intentions. Yeah, he wasn't the first to say that. People have said that for like centuries. Guy Fawkes was the first person to go into Parliament with honest intentions. Yeah, his honest intention was to blow it up, and had he not been routed out by a prostitute, I think that's what happened. He would have succeeded.
Have any of y'all read Ready Player One, and are you excited for the movie?
I have not read it, but I have heard that it hasn't even it has barely come out yet, and yet people are already SJWs are already attacking it. What is it? Ready Player One.
Those uncultured swine.
Yeah, they're criticizing it. They're criticizing it. They're criticizing it because it promotes gamer culture, and obviously, gaming culture is sexist and evil and violent. Of course. Yeah. Someone had posted something. I forget if it was the Bogosity Discord or the Lord Killian Discord, but it was one of those videos where these SJW women are talking about how horrible the internet is, and everyone on there is so bad and mean and terrible. Then why are you still on it? And misogynist.
Beg pardon, you whiny cupcakes.
What I said was like, okay, they all hate the internet, and they still won't leave. Yeah, it's like
if you don't like the internet, you bloody cupcakes, leave. Be gone. Yeah. Sayonara, punks.
Yeah,
going that way.
Yeah, Shane, it's kind of like what we say sometimes, so many leftists, love to say, oh, well, I'd rather live in a different country like Denmark or the United Kingdom because everything is socialized and you get free health care and all that. And I'm like, well, then how come you're not going, how come when you get sick, you don't go to Canada or the UK for medical treatment? I mean, that's the thing.
Commit the same fallacy that they commit against us. You don't, I mean, people have friends, family, lives built in the, and have a right to complain about it and continue to live there.
Yeah. Yeah, but you see, we don't make that argument. Yeah, and Shane, here's the thing, you know how you were talking about how in the UK there was once a long waiting for dentists that people were pulling out their own teeth. I read a story about a guy where because of the bureaucracy in the NHS, he was unable to get a crucial surgery to fix an infection in his foot, and he had to literally cut off his own toes to save his foot.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he had he was diabetic, and diabetics, are more, prone to blood infections and all that, and he had an infected cut on his foot, and it was becoming gangrenous, and the hospital said, we're going to have to amputate part of your toes or else you're going to lose your entire foot. Well, he was waiting in there for like 2 weeks, and finally they said, because of the bureaucracy, we got to cancel it. And it was getting worse and worse and worse, and finally he's like, screw it, I don't want to lose my leg, so he cut off his own toes. with just pliers too.
Wow. So how did he survive like the blood loss and shock and everything?
Yeah, you know, he even said even he was shocked. All he did was he carefully washed the wound thoroughly with cleaning chemicals. He drank a little bit of vodka to help dull the pain, and then he just pulled out and immediately covered it. And believe it or not, even the doctor who later examined him said, "I ain't gonna lie, for an amateur, you did a pretty damn good job." Mm. Well, the guy was also
I hope it was all also like, yes, immediately going to like the emergency room and everything.
Well, yeah, he did afterwards. Yeah, he eventually did afterwards. Like he covered up, he bandaged up, and he immediately went to the hospital to let them know what happened. But yeah, it just goes to show you, you know, I mean, he had an infection in his foot that needed immediate medical treatment, and because of the bureaucracy in the NHS, he didn't get it. They actually canceled it.
There was a doctor who was stationed in Antarctica who developed a gangrenous appendix and had to perform the appendectomy on himself. And he succeeded in doing that.
The guy who invented local anesthesia tested it out by doing an appendectomy on himself. DJ Arms 67, I'm sure this is sarcasm. You know, you make NHS even worse. People blame immigrants for the problems of the NHS. The thing is, they charge us. If you go to England and break your arm and go to an NHS hospital, they'll actually charge you 150%. You have to pay for your broken arm and half of someone else's.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and I tell this to people over and over again, Shane, because, you know, I don't like the U.S. healthcare system even more. I mean, hell, you know, just going to the hospital to talk with the sleep specialist, they didn't give me anything. Just talking with them cost me over $600. But I tell people at the end of the day, that's what the problem with the U.S. healthcare system is. It isn't a problem with the quality or the access. It's just how dang expensive it is.
I don't understand the appeal of free healthcare. I want quality healthcare, not crappy free healthcare.
Yeah, it's all about equality. Everyone dies equally.
Yeah. And you know what I really, really want to ask people, like, you know, why they think that healthcare is the thing that the government needs to get involved in and all that. And they always say, well, because we need healthcare to be healthy and all that. Yeah, well, you know what else we need? We need to be healthy. We need adequate shelter and food. And yet, for the most part, the government stays out of that market, although granted, they're trying to get into it, especially housing. But as you can see, you know, I mean, and prices for food as a whole usually get cheaper, with the exception of a couple, like the subsidies for corn and all that. But it just goes to show.
Just look at the association of the terms government housing with rundown, filthy slums. Because isn't that what you immediately think of when you think of government housing?
Oh yeah. I actually saw this funny parody one time. It was an old show from the 80s or something, and there was like a Soviet defector who came to America to live there, and he sees, you know, the government projects and how crappy and smelly it is, but he's all at home, and one of the black guys is like, dude, this place fucking sucks. Why do you like it so much? And he's like, I'm from the Soviet Union. This is a 3-star hotel compared to the apartment I lived in back there. Yeah, I've seen pictures of those Soviet, you know, people's buildings. They are, oh my God, they are horrible.
And DJ Arm 67, so he socialized food. You know, we know that wouldn't work, and yet socialized healthcare somehow would.
Yeah. And yeah, socialized food. Yeah, that's partially the reason. That's partially the reason why Venezuelans are starving to death. It's because the government's trying to distribute the food equally, but nobody has access to it. You know.
But I mean, like if you look at food stamps, I mean, yeah, the food stamp program has its problems, but not anywhere near as much as a socialist program. So instead of doing all this, you know, crazy Obamacare or universal whatever, why not have a certain thing, you know, where it's an income-based thing where you have a health savings account and government makes contributions to that the way they do to your debit card for your food stamps. I mean, that's not what a libertarian would want, but it'd be a darn sight better than what's there. And
yeah, you know, I mean, it's, yeah, as I put out, you got to start somewhere, you know. Yeah. By the way,
Rand Paul actually advocated for that and talked about it, and everyone was like, oh no, we can't do that because that would make the insurance companies richer. And Obamacare did what?
Well, there's a difference, Shane.
Can I ask
Therefore, what he does is good no matter what.
Yeah, you dropped out, Chris, and we missed most of what you were saying.
I said, there's a difference. There's a difference. Obama was a Democrat, and I'm a Democrat, so I support him. So therefore, anything he does is gold. But Rand Paul, he's those evil Republicans that are going to turn America into the backwater boondocks.
How many of you guys actually vote?
I vote.
I voted a couple times, you know. I'll even admit I voted for Donald Trump, but again, it wasn't because I actually, you know, supported him. It was more out of cynicism. I was basically saying, fuck it, we're screwed no matter who wins, so why not? Yeah.
Just take us to hell even faster.
Yeah. Just kill me and get it over with.
I wouldn't do that to anyone.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's election was basically America saying, just kill me, please, kill me.
Kind of reminds me. Yeah, kind of reminds me of this one joke that my friend told me one time, where two guys are sitting in Hiroshima on August 5th, 1945, and let's just say they know about atomic bombs and all that. And as the bomb's dropping, you know, they're like, "Oh my God, we got to get to a shelter." And a guy gets in his car, and it's like, "What are you doing? You'll never escape the explosion in time." He's like, "Exactly, I'm going to the epicenter." Well, why is that? Because I'd rather be vaporized instantly than have to suffer through the aftermath.
So we got a couple of points from David Stewart in the chat. California, where he lives, $77 billion into a few miles of high-speed rail in the Central Valley, which is enough to have fed every man, woman, and child in the U.S. for an entire month. And he talks about Thomas Sowell saying that it's actually cheaper just to give the money to poor people, but that would mean less government jobs.
Well, yeah, that's...
And it kind of brings in mind I don't know how many of these stories are true or apocryphal or what, but it could have happened because Milton Friedman did a lot of going to other countries, you know, as an economic advisor, and they like showing off what they were doing. And there was this one country somewhere where they were showing him, they had all these guys digging a big hole, and he says, well, you see here, now we're digging a canal. And Friedman says, well, why don't you use machinery? It would be done a lot faster. And they said, oh, well, you don't understand. This is a jobs program. And Friedman said, well, in that case, why not give them teaspoons?
Oh, yeah, I love that story, yeah. Oh, but Shane, Milton Friedman supported and funded Pinochet. Yeah, because he met with him for like 45 minutes. Yeah. Milton Friedman even pointed to the absurdity of that to himself, because it's like, oh yeah, I visited Chile and I gave, you know, a little bit of advice to Pinochet and some of his economic advisors. And he's like, yeah, I was also in Yugoslavia, which was ruled by Tito. I visited China when it still was ruled by Mao. I visited quite a few other nations that had some pretty nasty rulers. How come nobody's calling me on that?
Yeah, it's kind of like the reason why Tom Woods is labeled as a racist by the Southern Poverty Law Center is because he did 3 sessions teaching economics to this one group that went on to found like this one either company or organization or whatever that ended up being taken over by white supremacists. And so that means he was a racist. So yeah, give me a break.
And here's another thing. I've studied a little bit about Pinochet. You know, everyone likes to talk about how free market reforms led to extreme poverty and mass hysteria and all that. And then I took a thorough look, and it turns out, yeah, that didn't happen until the late 80s, near the end of Pinochet's reign. Because in the beginning, he was very interventionist. He intervened with the peso. He caused mass inflation. It wasn't until near the end of his reign that he finally said, okay, I'll let free market take over, you know.
And that was really only because the opposition was mounting and he wanted to keep his position.
Yeah, you know. And, you know, look, you know, I'm not saying I support coup d'etats and all that, but everyone likes to praise Allende as being like this great leader of the people who was violently overthrown by the CIA. And I'm like, people, Allende dug his own grave. You know, he destroyed the Chilean economy, and instead of answering for it, he's like, oh, it wasn't my fault. It was those greedy rich people that did it. And he was causing so much chaos and anarchy that literally all Pinochet had to do was just stand up and say, hey, if you people support my coup, I'll restore everything. And people were like, okay, you know, I mean, literally towards the end of his career, nobody liked Allende.
That's kind of like how Reagan got elected in a landslide. I think, you know, he could have won with a platform of just 3 words: double-digit inflation. Because I remember they kept saying that over and over again: double-digit inflation.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I recall correctly, like, his opponent, just wasn't doing anything, That's why, in all honesty, the American Dad episode where Ronald Reagan loses because he never got shot, that never would have happened because, as other people have pointed out, the people who ran against him, especially in his re-election campaign, they were such, idiots of candidates that Reagan was going to win no matter what. Yeah.
It's sad that Mondale only took his home state and Washington, D.C., and everything else went to Reagan. And I remember watching this on TV because D.C. was so small that they had to have it flashing so you could see it.
Yeah. Yeah, Mondale. Yeah, it's just like...
I mean, what did he have?
Yeah, I mean, most people don't even... Yeah, I mean, most people don't even remember him, Do
you ever go to any conventions, Shane?
Yeah.
Not anymore. Don't really have the free time or the money. I went to some of the smaller ones.
And he says hashtag jail government.
Yeah. Yeah, also I was reading an old comic strip called Ozzie and Millie. I don't know if you guys heard of it. I mean, it's pretty good for the most part, but the cringy parts come when it gets into politics because the writer is a transsexual SJW and all that. And it's from the late '80s. The late '90s, early 2000s. And there's one where they're talking about the election and they're mentioning Ross Perot and they describe the Reform Party as being the Nazi Party. And I'm like, how?
It's just really amazing how, you have things that are just kind of ruined by the cringe, because in last year's Doctor Who, there was this episode called Oxygen, which I think is a great episode. I give it 9 out of 10. The only reason I don't give it 10 out of 10 is because, they've done a great job of setting up, this alternate future, which is basically mercantilist, and everything is basically run by this, fascist corporation, which, Doctor Who has done before. And, to the point where they're just controlling literally the oxygen that you breathe. And it's a great story. The problem is they keep referring to it as capitalism.
Yeah.
And if they had just done it once, I would have been fine. But they just kept referring capitalism over and over. I was spending so much time criticizing. It's like, no, I can't give it 10 out of 10. I got to drop it down to 9.
Yeah,
it's still a great episode, but God, fix that one thing.
Yeah, it's like they always say, well, if we have free market capitalism, we'll end up like those crappy sci-fi movies where an evil corporation takes over. And actually, bad writing advice actually mentioned that it's like, yeah, let's not describe the detail. Let's have the rich live in these massive things. The poor get poorer and poorer, and all these super corporations rule. And let's work. Let's just say that's how it is, and it's got to be overthrown.
Yeah, Heather and I are watching Dark Matter. We're in season 2 on Netflix, and we're enjoying it. But it's like, okay, you've got a government, but it's inept, and then these corporations are at war with each other, and they don't really... I can suspend my disbelief and enjoy it because that's the setting and that's what it is, but they don't really explain how things got to be that way.
Brian. Okay, we can roll.
Yeah, one time I saw a video that said the dangers of libertarianism, and all it was a clip from Soylent Green. Like, somehow libertarianism...
Oh yeah,
stand up and bend to other people.
I wish I could draw, because I have this really great idea to mock, the whole sci-fi movie or the movie cliche about the evil corporation and all that, where they do all this to cover up money and all that, and they're like, and it shows a board of directors meeting. They're like, okay, guys, listen up. This chemical spill, if left unattended, will cost us millions of dollars in sales, and it will damage our image. So therefore, I propose that we spend billions of dollars hiring a PMC to go to that area, kill everyone involved, including government agents.
But I mean, I kind of see it as being the same way as, I mean, you got, Independence Day, Pacific Rim, things like that. Your basic aliens come to Earth to invade. Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. No one can come up with a good reason for aliens to invade Earth. So, I mean, it's going to be contrived.
Actually, I was telling you, Shane, there's actually an old series that I used to read all the time as a kid called Animorphs, and it's about aliens that come to Earth and they give morphine technology, and they actually have an explanation for why they want to invade Earth. Yeah, they're not invading Earth because they want its resources or all that. It's because the Yeerks, which are these parasites that take over human minds, they're going through this galactic war with another alien race, and why they want to take over Earth is so they can take over human
hello.
to mass attack their enemies. Hey, Charles.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey, it's been a while.
Here's our token black, guys. Here's our token black. That means we're not racist because we have a black in here.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
how y'all doing?
Good.
Just finished dinner, did some recycling, and getting ready for a very big and important event I have to do on Saturday, Sunday, and class stuff. So, I've been pretty busy for the past couple of days. So, So, what are y'all talking about?
Well, right now we were talking about the plot hole about like aliens, and we were talking about sci-fi, and we're talking about the plot hole of aliens invading Earth, but yet they never explain why aliens would want to invade Earth. Because if they're an advanced civilization, millions of years ahead of us, why would they want to attack Earth?
Territory.
Yeah.
And that grew out of the discussion of science fiction where a corporation is taking over everything. Well, how would that have happened? How would you have gotten to that place of market capitalism?
Well, the reason why people have that belief is because they see, this corporation has has control. Like say Facebook, where all the stuff's going on Facebook. They say, see, that's what happens when corporations get so powerful. But they fail to realize is that they also have a little bit of government help of with the NSA, all this type of stuff. And
you're talking about people who are more freaked out about Cambridge Analytica getting your Facebook data than the NSA.
I think because the NSA they're used to it. They're like, it's the government. They're on our team, so that's okay, or that sort of thing. It's like as long as the responsible people have. And honestly, I'm going to say this: as you're on the internet, you will be someone is cataloging your data, be it by government or anyone else. So I don't know why people are so up in arms about this whole thing, because someone's going to get your data eventually. And I just actually watched a video from what's it called? It's good stuff. He talked about Facebook and how how the whole thing, but he also asked the question of how people seem to less socialized and such, about how people we're getting pinged every day about how people we don't have that face-to-face type conversation anymore. And I'm like, I do see that point, but that's a little bit of an anecdotal type of thing that he's sharing. But it could be that, because then again, I don't check Facebook as I should, or maybe I should do more or less, because all I do on Facebook is I talk to some people, put my show up in podcast. That's pretty much it. And talk to people about collaborations and doing other stuff with. Because if I actually did try to delete my podcast, that basically shuts off all the other avenues. So it's easy for some people to say, I could just shut off the podcast. Shut off your Facebook. And you'd be, I'm like, yeah, okay. But, I rarely use Facebook for that type of
same.
And my phone, I would delete it from my phone, but I tried going on Facebook on my web browser. It's slow as hell, even with the fast internet and everything. But again, that's part of my phone, which I need to get another one, Yeah.
Well, and I think the big problem on phones is Facebook Messenger, because that's the one that's doing all the real data collecting, because you're giving it access to your contacts and your text messages and your call history and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't used Facebook in over 1 or 2 years, and even then, the only reason the last time I used it was because I had to change my password because some person tried to blackmail poorly, by the way. They did a god-awful job. You know, it's like basically they tried to hack my computer and find embarrassing pictures of me, and then they were going to send it to my friends and family, and yet every single person like they were trying to send it to, I did not know them. So I'm like, yeah, so I'm just like, okay, go ahead. I don't care. Screw you. And I just blocked them and changed all my password to protect myself, and that was just it.
But it looks like they might be trying to reform a lot of it and put in the technology that allows you to, you know, erase personal data you don't want from the site and actually, you know, take it away from Facebook.
Well,
so that'd be good.
Yeah, well, this is a woman that when I was in a low spiral spin and lonely, I met on a dating site and all that, and she was just a gold digger. She was just trying to collect people and talk about how, you know, oh, I found this embarrassing picture of you. If you don't give me $300, I'm going to post it to your friends and family. And I'm just like, and I just gave her the middle finger and I just told her screw off, and I just did that. It's pretty funny though, because I told the story to a friend of mine, and I actually gave him her IP address, and he knows a lot more about computers about me, and he actually started going back and trolling her, and she finally she didn't contact me, but she told him, you know, dude, stay the hell away from me, and then she blocked him, and it was so hilarious. And my friend knows more about computers than I do, so he was able to safely do it.
The way you blackmail someone is you first get them to commit some sort of minor further transgression. Yeah. And then you use that to blackmail them into doing something even bigger and worse. And after a while, you own them.
Yeah, looking back now, I should have just told her, you know, it's like, lady, do I look like I'm a rich CEO who has a big reputation? I'm just an average Joe, you know.
Yes, it is. It's
yeah, you know.
It's something that again, it's the hard part of Facebook and all this, because it's been, well, you know, it makes people connecting easier. That's the thing about you know, before that there was text messages, Yahoo. Everything is about connection. I mean, it is a lot easier to talk to people that are not only not in the same state town you are. Now you can talk to people not in the same state or country or even time zone. That is amazing technology. What we're doing right now is amazing technology. But the stuff with when you look at, say, with the data analyzing, which is disturbing to say the least, is some, you know, hey, you know, my privacy is important, but it does, you know, it just shows people are so angry at Cambridge, but yet, you know, again, like Shay said, it's like they are, I think they're not toned up, but they just have this, you know, it's like, it's the NSA. It's our guys, you know, it's this country type of, you know, even though the United States is like the government, they're with us, they're on our team, even though they haven't acted like they're with the regular people for how many years now? It just keeps.
But it's like, what do they have to do? I mean, with the Vault 7 leaks, when it comes out that the CIA has been actively spreading around malware, trying to infect everyone's machines to get their data. I mean, how could what is it going to take for these people to say, "Hey, government's gone too far now"?
Yeah,
it's always because, again, people have this personal thing about governments is like it's what party it's in power. It's this one party. They say Democrats or Republicans, and some Republicans, everything's all good if they get power, but then when things, it's always schwitzes up because it's this whole my team versus your team. And meanwhile, while you're fighting for your team and everything else, and we're dragging the conservatives to the 21st century, or we're making this great, like, you realize your neighborhoods and your communities and your towns, cities, and states are still run down. It's like, you do realize at the end of the day, y'all being played. It's funny.
Well, it's kind of like I was seeing something where, oh, well, you know, look at what the right does. And they had picked like a couple of states and said, oh, okay, look at these. Here are 2 states where the right is in power and look at how terrible they're doing. It's like, okay, are we ignoring Michigan that's been ruled by Democrats for 50 years and has been just run into the ground?
Yeah. Shane, that kind of reminds me of, people that try to defend, radical Islam by saying, it's like, Islam is a religion of peace. Look at these, mosques and all that, that took in victims during a hurricane and all that. And like, yeah, every church has, a good part of that. But then you also have the groups like in Saudi Arabia and many parts of the Middle East, that say women can't do this and that and all that because it's bad for them and all that. It's like, and vice versa and all that. You can't cherry pick your data, people.
It is hard to, in cases, to pick it, because again, it's hard to do reformations and such. It's really hard because it was hard to do back in the day, and it's really hard to do one probably now. It is when you look at these type of institutions, and again, I think the best way to do it, like to go back to politics for a minute, is how do you do it? Is to let other parties go, because I talked to someone on this really cool conversation on Discord. It says the voting thing about like in the United States, it's like 10% for a third party person, and president to actually get like a part of the debates. In the UK or all this one, it's like it takes 4% of the popular vote. And in Russia, the evil Russia, it has 7%. If you poll over 7%, you will be a chance to debate against Putin. If you poll like 10 to 15%, Putin goes out and murks you. But still, you can have a debate with him. But yeah. But what does it say about the United States that if the vote, the 10% of the popular opinion has to be in that. I'm like, Gary Johnson came close.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. Now, when you have this whole Russian scare about Jill Stein and all the stuff about her saying that she was a part of the Russian stuff, and what CNN did, they basically doxed someone and went to that home and said, "Oh, your stuff," say, "Oh, you Russian content. How do you feel?" I'm like, "What are you doing? You're making more of the division, and you're poisoning the well." Am I using that term right? By the way, it's because it's pretty much seems like they're poisoning the well for anyone to actually do any like third party or anything else, because it just says, "Oh, if you want third parties, it means you're a Russian sympathizer." I thought,
Charles, I was about to say this. The most stupidest thing I ever heard one time, and it came from The View, so you can predict where it's going to go, but they were talking about the whole Russian scandal and what worried them, and there was one woman that said, with all this political tension, I'm just worried about World War III and nukes, and I'm just thinking, well, then why are you perpetuating the myth that Russia interfered in the elections? This is causing America to become more hostile to Russia, and what's Russia going to do in response? Yeah, you're not preventing the war, you're causing it.
It's just, and everyone's saying, "Oh, and I'm sit back, and personally, I had no dog. I didn't want Hillary or Trump, and such. Personally, it goes back and forth. I didn't care, and it's funny. People just, if Hillary was there, people would just be like, "It's awesome, women power. It's gonna be awesome," and then we still will have the same issues. And we'll probably be more divided as much as we are.
Actually, Charles, this whole Russian debacle actually reminds me of something that happened before even my own grandpa was born. The USS Maine incident. You guys know what that was, right?
No.
That was a ship that sank. That was a ship that sank in the Gulf of Mexico, and it was blamed on the Spanish, and it led to the Spanish-American War. Nowadays,
when it was really a boiler exploded.
What was that, Shane?
It was actually a boiler that exploded.
Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of scientists agree. A lot of historians believe that it actually was blown up by either the boiler or an engine failure. But back then, everyone said it's got to be the Spanish because they're the only ones present in that area. So what else could have caused it to blow up? And even though the Spanish kept denying it over and over again and saying, "Look, we didn't blow up the Maine," William McKinley said, "Screw you, then we're going to war." It's like,
and if you ever wondered what the saying "Remember the Maine" was all about, that's what it was. It was a call to war over that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, same thing. In a way, it's very similar to how people acted to Germany, over the Zimmerman telegram and the unrestricted submarine warfare. Everyone likes to say, well, Germany brought it on themselves for doing that, but you want to know why Germany did what it did? It's because we were betraying, the neutrality pact. We were trading with England, and we literally were doing nothing to talk to Germany and figuring out what's going on. We were just listening to whatever Britain told us, and Britain was saying, "Oh, those Germans are evil. They're raping French women, eating Belgian babies, setting fire to Russian puppies, and all that." And that's all they were saying, and we listened to them. We weren't getting Germany's side of the story. We weren't doing that. We're just like, oh, we're hearing bad stories about Germany. Okay, even though we'll say we're neutral, we'll support Britain.
Well, how many people are actually aware of the fact that they took out a full-page ad in the New York Times warning people, don't get on the Lusitania, it's transferring arms and we're going to blow it up?
Yeah. That's a thing that gets ignored. It was that the Lusitania was carrying fuel and ammo for the British Army.
But it's a way to get people to galvanize and go to war, to these pointless wars, to that just told them, look what happened with others. I mean, look at the Iraq war. People will say we're going to get these I would say Afghanistan, fine. You know what? Afghanistan held the Taliban, and they should have gone after it. If they weren't going to give was going to give Bin Laden up, I'm like, well,
the Taliban was the government of Afghanistan.
Yeah, so at that point, hey, if you're going to say no, then we're going to come in. I mean, hey,
they never gave them a chance. They didn't even try the diplomatic route.
Yeah, I wish they could have done more, but I'm like, fine, get Bin Laden and whatever. But
and people were like, but you can't do diplomacy. Diplomacy doesn't work with the. They had been a diplomatic partner for many, many years, and the U.S. was giving them tens of millions of dollars a year in aid, and
Didn't the former George W., the first George Bush, said that these guys reminded him of the founding fathers?
George H.W.
Yeah, H.W. Bush said that these guys had the same tenacity as the founding fathers. And he was talking about the people of the Taliban. I'm like, okay, why couldn't they talk? Look, I understand that America was really upset, and it was a highly emotional time back then. And if they would have actually said, okay, we'll make it, okay, if you don't send, I will make a hard line and say, look, if you're going to go, if you're not going to give us Bin Laden or anything else, we should have done this thing under the table. Say, okay, we're getting Bin Laden, that's it, and get in and get out. If they said no and say or try to warn them, then I say, hey, that it is what it is. But then we go to Iraq trying to say we're going to fix the Middle East, which even back then people said this was wrong, and they went, and somehow the money and boondoggles and all this stuff, which, by the way,
and it's like you had Iraq, where we turned against an ally, Afghanistan, where we turned against an ally, Libya, where we turned against an ally. They used to call England perfidious Albion. I think to a lot of countries in the world, America is pretty much perfidious Colombia.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the reason why Iran, North Korea. I mean, recently North Korea is trying to play nice, but why would they? Would you really want to play nice with a country that will say we're friends 1 minute, and they'll stab you in the back and the next, and then next they'll disable your country, and then you have more terrorists, and when we keep going back and forth into this big hamster wheel that have multiple deaths, mass people who have they can't go back to their homes because it's been droned and destroyed, the infrastructure destroyed, so they have to go to other cultures, and then we have culture clashes. Things it just completely goes backwards, and not back, but just everything just keeps going in this same destructive cycle. I mean, you can say, "Oh, we're trying to be helpful to migrants and immigrants and all this stuff," but to the best way to be helpful to them, the best way that should have been helpful is to tell your governments or people or vote people in that would not bomb them, would not throw drone strikes, would not actually help build up those I'm not saying nation building, but I mean actually try to do trade or something to build those communities up again, or something like to those communities in those countries again, so that they can go and actually have a better life there, instead of just saying, okay, we just welcome you back home, give you this, that, and the other, and after we droned and destroyed your house and family, probably killed your your significant other and everything else. Oh, by the way, why are you still mad at us? And I'm like, seriously, no one. It's just like they just don't get it. They don't know why. It's just this. They're trying to go for the empathy, but yet they don't understand why people. They don't have that understanding type gene. You know what I mean? They have the empathy gene, but they don't have that, common sense thinking type of gene that most people have, especially in the UK and the United States, mostly on the left. Which, I mean, yeah, they won't. The people on the left will never admit these things because that means that, oh crap, that means you have to look and say, maybe we shouldn't have been liking Hillary or President Obama or all these other people. Maybe we should have been more critical. Maybe we should have been like, instead of just going from the back and forth, we should have been looking into what actually people who are telling you before. We should have been listening to them instead of calling them crackpots or racist or anything else. No one, I hope you understand the feel my frustration here is that arrogance, that hubris the left has, that they will never admit that they made they made terrible mistakes, and they just want to go back to sleep and pretend it's the.
Now Charles is dropping out on us.
Yep.
And that was my rant for the night. I'm gonna be quiet.
Yeah, you dropped out on us.
Yeah,
I guess
I was worried about my internet tonight. Mine's actually been stable.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my internet goes off and on, but I probably blame my PC.
Yeah,
my PC, which I'm gonna get a new one in May, so I have the money to do it.
Yeah, people say me and Charles talk too much. We don't.
The internet just keeps shutting off and such.
About. By the way, Charles, you left out another country that we betrayed during our war on terror, Pakistan.
Oh,
yeah. Pakistan at the very beginning, they were our biggest allies. And, I think the president at one point did say, look, we hate radical Islam as much as you do, and we'll do everything we can to help you in your wars, especially because we have contact with some of the terrorist groups. But what happened? We began sending drones to attack their villages, and they're like, wait, whoa, what? When were you guys at war with us? And they were like, oh, we're not war at you. We're just bombing suspected terrorist attacks. And they're like, without telling us, you know what? That's it. We're not supporting you anymore.
And not only that, when they were trying to look for Bin Laden, they were actually trying to do vaccinations.
The fake vaccine.
I'm still pissed off about that. I am still pissed off about that.
Yeah, they gave like fake. I don't know if it was polio or flu vaccines, but it later revealed that it was polio. But then it was later revealed that they were just looking for Bin Laden. And not only did that destroy trust with the United States, it actually caused many independent doctor groups that are on the ground trying to fix things. There was a case where shortly after that happened, some Red Cross doctors got attacked and killed because they thought the Red Cross were CIA agents when they were just doctors legitimately trying to help.
Polio
say something, has been Chris. Eliminated. I was too busy focusing on a Rob Dyke episode.
Polio has been eliminated from everywhere on the planet except for Pakistan and Afghanistan, and that is the reason why. It is Obama's fault. It is Hillary's fault. They both should be put in jail for war crimes.
Yeah.
Well, but that's not. They'll say, the left will say, well, that's not really their fault. They will compartmentalize and put everyone else there. But meanwhile, if it was Trump,
they gave the orders. They gave the orders.
Yes. Yeah. Imagine if it was let's say it was Romney who did it, they will be screaming. They will be right with you, Shane, like, oh, lock him up.
That's why I hated the Iraq war protests in 2003 and all that, is because if you actually took a look at it, it was not anti-Iraq war. It was just an anti-Bush, because the moment Obama he continued everything. Everyone else was doing it. All you heard when he talked about the anti-war movement was crickets chirping.
Oh,
well, if only someone had predicted that he would do that. Jeez, if someone had gone onto YouTube and told everyone, that would have happened.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of people besides you, Shane, that said that. But again,
it was. I was nothing special. All you had to do was look at the guy's record.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. You can add that, but you can also add the war on drugs to that as well.
Oh,
I love how majority of the time. Well, President Obama was asked this question about marijuana and all this stuff, and he just sidestepped it. It's the same thing of this whole, this elite, like, oh, I did a little blow and I smoked weed. Same thing Penn Jillette talked about. Still, like, you did this, so you're now president, but yet the same person who did that was probably in jail.
Yeah.
And never being that. And I'm like, where's the empathy of that? And and same thing as George W. Bush. He did cocaine and he somehow became president. I'm like, it's just that that type of level of just I don't want to use that word. I hate using this word because the SJWs ruin it. Privilege. Yeah. If you want someone else can find a better word, put it in the chat or whatever.
Yeah, Shane, Shane. I remember that one video you were doing where you were responding to people that when they were asking political questions to Gary Johnson, and I really was applauding you when you responded to that woman who said, "Well, my son, my son, I don't know I can't remember if he died or if he survived, but was critically, injured and left disabled, and because he smoked some heroin and all that." And you explained, well, that is very tragic, but at the end, this was caused because of the war on drugs, because the drugs are illegal. It's all underground, and there's no way to reliably determine, what kind of drug you're getting and how safe it is. Unlike, with legal drugs, because for all it could have been something a guy made in his basement. And had he been around in the 1920s, he would have ended up in that situation because he drank some bathtub whiskey.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no real reason why doing heroin once should kill you. I mean, if it was manufactured by a company where the dosage could be controlled and, its dosage, there's no reason for it. Overdoses don't happen because they're crazy and they want this big high. They overdose because they don't actually know how much of the drug they're getting.
And not to mention, Shane, if people do overdose, because I've heard this happen to personal friends of mine, when they do overdose, they don't get the equipment because if someone takes cocaine and suddenly they're on the ground, foaming at the mouth and twitching, they're like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? Because if they call the hospital and all that and they go to jail, even if they save their life, they're like, oh, good, my friend's alive. But then the police are going to show up and say, yeah, when your friend gets all better, we have to take him away and arrest him. And
it's horrible that they make doctors narc on their patients like that.
Yeah, I've actually heard there was actually a doctor, who was so appalled, by doing that he actually was known, to flat out, lie to the police and say, oh no, my friend, oh no, this person who was overdosing, they weren't overdosing, they just had a drug, they just had an allergic reaction to an over-the-counter drug, and he did that because he just couldn't find it in his heart to send the patient to jail,
Yeah.
And of course, how the police responded, they took away his license and threw him in jail.
Oh yeah.
And
that's what they want to do.
The incentive to to go to the hospital and seek treatment and stop being a drug addict in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to do to doctors who prescribe opioids for pain patients.
Oh yeah. And also the war on drugs is ultimate proof why I don't think banning guns is gonna solve gun violence, because it's like, I just want to tell those kids, they're like, well, we just want guns off our campus. It's like, yeah, well, drugs are banned on campus, and yet almost everyone I hung out with, in high school either had tried drugs or they were doing drugs or they knew someone who could sell you drugs.
And it's just again, and about they think government is supposed to be your ally and friend, but it's not. It's never has been. And I when you look at some people, I understand when you look at, say, for example, the March of Our Lives and all this other stuff. I don't want to go after them who they went through a traumatic event. They went through something that is one of the worst events.
Sorry, Charles. You blocked out there. Sorry, Charles. You blocked out there. I thought you were done talking.
All right, but they went through a traumatic event. But the thing is, I disagree with them. But I look at this and I'm saying, I mean, it just seems that they want to say, people were like, well, we need psychom. I'm like, okay, then what is your plan to say bomb buffs out there? I'm like, okay, what are you going to do with all the illegal guns there? I mean, it's another war of an inanimate object, like the war on guns. Again, it will, and people say, "Oh, but drugs is caused." Like, yeah, it was caused by racism and such like that to keep certain groups in the country down. We can all, but what do you think? With a lot of people back in the day, including the NRA, actually was believe in for gun control when black people who own the guns, but that's just
Fun fact, Charles. Fun fact, Charles. You mentioned about how the war on drugs has its origins in racism. I've actually read sort of the temperance movement that led to prohibition was partially caused by groups who are anti-immigration, in particular anti-Irish Catholic immigration.
Yeah, it always goes. It's always the same stuff. And my thing is, and people, you know what? At the end of this, I don't know what's going to happen in the elections. Which, at this point, I don't know. It could be a blue wave or a red roll. I don't know. I think it's just going to be back and forth. I still think Trump's going to win his. He's going to win there, and then the Democrats will win. It will be like President Obama again. It's going to be all awesome again. It will just go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
It just...
this is the thing.
You can call these things. The electorate does not have a long-term memory.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You can go look at so many of these things. You can look at gun control, marriage licenses, zoning, minimum wage. It's amazing how many of these things you trace back to their origins and find out that the reason why they came about was to keep down black people.
Yeah, actually, in one of the few episodes where Adam ruins everything is was kind of right, although granted he destroyed it at the end, was when he was talking about, house zoning and all that. It goes back to its origins with racism, where the green zone and the red zone, that they talk about, the only difference was the red zone had more minority groups and the green zone had more WASPs, which was white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, because contrary to popular belief, it wasn't just blacks. People back then hated it. It was Catholics, it was Polish people, it was all that. And the government said, if you live in the red zone, you can't get a bank loan, and the banks were legally prohibited from giving loans to people in that area, but the green zone was allowed. But of course, Adam ruined his own video by later saying it was all blacks versus whites, and whites need to pay for taking advantage of white privilege. It's like, no, Adam. Yeah. I think that's what pisses me off about Adam Ruins Everything, because his first couple episodes were actually really pretty good, and they brought up some pretty valid points. And then he starts making episodes that says healthcare is expensive because of greedy insurance corporations and this and that. And it's like, Adam, do you not do proper research?
Well, it's like I kept waiting for him to bring up things like the certificate of need that you need to get to do a new hospital.
Yeah, even Lord Dapperton pointed that it wasn't Dapperton, it was a different guy. It was a much lesser known YouTuber, but he is a libertarian like we are, and he said it's like, okay, Adam, you said the government has nothing to do with why hospitals are so expensive, yet you're ignoring, the regulations, the requirement of need, the zoning, and all the other taxes and regulations, especially with the FDA, to get drugs and medical care approved.
That's something else. How many minority areas even have a hospital because they've got it zoned, and they're like, oh, you can't build there. You have to build your hospital way over here.
Yeah. Yeah, here's the thing, Shane. It is true. We do have things like cures for cancer, technology that can make deaf people hear, blind people see, and all that. But contrary to popular belief, they're not being held back because the greedy corporations want us to stay sick to make profit. The reason why they're not there, as going back to the guy who made those machines that can make blind people see again, he said the reason why I can't get it to market is because to put it to the FDA would cost too much. It would cost me hundreds of millions of dollars just to get it in the pre-trial stage.
Well, and Adam was talking about the problem with antibiotics, about so much antibiotic resistance that might make them useless, but you try even getting to the point where you can even start a trial on a new antibiotic.
Yeah, people fail to realize the reason why we have super germs that are immune to antibiotics is because we're using the same antibiotics over and over again, because, like you said, it's too expensive to develop a new one, because, like, if I were to discover, like, let's say if I found, a rare type of mold that's found in, I don't know, like kumquats, and I found out that it's really effective against most bacteria, and let's say I discovered it even can work against certain viruses, if I were to say, look, I found this, type of mold that if developed properly can cure illness.
You dropped out again, Chris.
Sorry. Did I break out?
Yep.
You don't have to remind him that he's dropped out.
Oh. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was about to say, like, if I were to discover, like, a mold that's found in kumquats and it can cure many diseases, including bacteria and viruses, I would try to do it, but I would be told, okay, you got to give us hundreds of millions of dollars. We'll look at it for about 10 years, and even then, that's not a guarantee. And even if we do approve of it, you got to spend millions of more dollars to go through this trial and that trial. It's like, if anything, I'd be like, well, screw that,
Well, yeah, and I think it's just... they also want you to say, I guess it's kind of sort of like the certificate need we were talking about. They want you to apply to say that, there is a proper need for this, and there's not a whole bunch of other stuff just like it on the market. And of course, with antibiotics, there are.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and I will say this, Shane, I love it when people like to say, but we need the FDA because remember that, I forgot what the chemical was called, but it was a chemical that was used to treat morning sickness, but it turns out it led to birth defects and all that. Yeah, and people are like, but yeah, we didn't get affected because it wasn't approved in the FDA. And one person responded by saying, oh yeah, remember Vioxx? That was supposed...
Yeah, yeah, you went off again.
They're saying, oh yeah, remember Vioxx? Vioxx was it was like a blood pressure treatment or something, but it turns... What?
You dropped off again.
You keep dropping, yeah, but we get the idea, I think. And it's like people aren't looking at like the whole statistics, not just like, oh, how many lives would they save versus how much go through, but how many lives are lost because of all of the delays.
Yeah, that's why I agree with you when I say this. Every time the FDA says this new approved drug will save 100,000 people a year, I'm going to say, yeah, that means last year 100,000 people died because you were being lazy and weren't getting your fingers out of your butts to approve of it.
Johnny, we've got some extraneous noise coming from your end, so if you could mute your mic when you're not talking.
Anyway, I'm about to head out. Just got some other stuff here, but I want to say one thing before I go, and hopefully I don't get cut off. There is something I think a lot of people seem to forget is that there are what's especially online is that there's a human being on the other end that they're not all evil. They're not everyone who voted for it. They're not like Nazis or anything else with people who are beyond redemption or anything. It's just it seems like in this course we are just having these type of everyone's angry at each other. Everyone is just frustrated, angry, and ready to go with their swords or knives or whatever into battle, trying to get these wins. But in the end, it's meaningless. I honestly, and the worst part of it, even if you do drop your sword, you still get stabbed and you'll be destroyed. You have no choice but to defend yourself.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know what else to solve this, because even if you did vote all Democrat and everyone's happy, there'll still be people out there angry, insulted. I don't know what you do to bring people together and actually, try to treat people humane, because that's the one thing hopefully we can try to do more of, is try to treat people humanely. Try to be like, okay, we have disagreements, but let's just move on and try to actually hopefully build bridges, and all that good stuff. Because right now it's just everyone wants to just live in their lone little ethno states, and everyone would be happy, even though their problems will not go away.
If they wanted to do that, they wouldn't be statists, because statism is all about forcing your way on others.
Yeah, and Charles, I will say this: the whole fighting in politics, especially with Democrats versus Republican and all that shit. It reminds me of this allegory AVGN once said when he was talking about winning a very bad hard game. It's like, yeah, you win, but what did you win? It's like winning a street fight. Yeah, you won, but what'd you get in the end? You just got a couple cuts and bruises and a broken bone.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's true. Anyway, I'll talk to you all guys later. Peace.
Yeah, see you, Charles.
Have a good one.
Peace.
The sound of silence.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure you're going to end the podcast soon anyway, so.
Yeah, we got like 10 minutes, I think.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, I got to eat dinner soon, so that's good. Yeah, so.
Okay.
So, what are we going to talk about now?
What do people want to talk about?
Rick and Morty.
I don't know. I'm just gonna whack Shane on the head with a
Are
frying.
we gonna take a pool to see what year Rick and Morty season 4 will be out?
I don't know.
Oh, it's going to be December this year. They hinted about releasing it with Mr. Poopy Butthole saying he might have a big, long Santa Claus beard, and it seems to work out with that roughly 1.5 year increments they've been following.
Yeah. It's just weird because it's an incredibly popular show, and yet it seems to take them forever to order another season.
I would gladly wait for that excellent writing that they come up with. The same was true with Breaking Bad. Those seasons came out in long waiting periods in between, and Better Call Saul. Totally worth it, though.
Oh, yeah, they're really good.
I love that, it's a sci-fi show, but they don't try to be scientific. They're really more philosophical. And that's the most entertaining thing about it.
So there went the Rick and Morty conversation. Now what you want to talk about?
I'm going to be experimenting with a new drug. It's tert amyl alcohol. It interacts just like alcohol, but it doesn't get metabolized into a toxic aldehyde. So that's going to be interesting.
Okay, can you give us a little more information for people who don't really know the chemistry of it all?
Yeah, so it's basically an alcohol, but it's a tertiary alcohol. So how do I describe this? If you bring it up, the hydroxide group is bound to a carbon that's also bound to 3 other carbons. And that's important because it cannot be oxidized into an aldehyde or a ketone, where the oxygen can't become double bonded to that carbon because that carbon doesn't have a hydrogen to give up.
Are you guys talking about chemistry now?
Yeah, I am. I'm a chemist. So anyways, I was reading up about this, and it's kind of funny because nobody really talks about, like, this is like the wonder alternative to alcohol, because that's the thing I hate about alcohol. I hate the headaches it gives me, and it lasts relatively short, but this should solves both of those problems and is much less toxic. Yet why isn't it widely used? I don't know.
Can't be as dangerous as trihydrogen chloride. You guys heard of that chemical?
Trihydrogen chloride? I've never.
I'll put it this way: it's a chemical that literally almost anything it touches immediately gets set on fire. Even glass.
Then how do you have a container holding it?
The only way it can be contained is you have to contain it in like a steel that's coated with a certain stuff, because only certain things like fluoride can resist it. Yeah, even us scientists are baffled by it.
You know what you should stay away from? Hydroxyl acid. It's a primary component in fertilizer and all sorts of industrial chemicals, and it's used as a coolant in nuclear power plants. And yet they just spray this stuff all over our crops. It's horrible.
Yeah, the funny thing you mentioned this, Shane, one time was that
I'm talking about water, by the way, just in case people missed it.
Yeah. Yeah, Shane, by the way, it's pretty funny you mentioned that, because, nuclear power plants could be pretty much almost entirely safe and we'd have no risk for Chernobyl. But why don't we? Because the few nuclear materials that are actually much more stable than uranium and subsidize plutonium and uranium, because things like thorium couldn't be used in atomic weaponry and all that.
Well, I mean, even if you want to stick with uranium, you can have sodium-cooled uranium reactors that would never melt down because the boiling point of sodium is so high.
Yeah, but as we pointed out, because the government can't use and all that, or military equipment, they're like, oh, it's of no use to us then.
What people need to understand about nuclear power, mostly, and I mean, whenever they're talking about radioactive waste and that high energy waste, they need to understand the actual quantities. People's minds can't deal intuitively with the sheer amount of energy that you get out of fissioning uranium. It's on the order, it's 5 to 6 orders of magnitude more energetic than combustion of hydrocarbons. So right off the bat, you're getting 5 to 6 times the amount of energy. So the amount of waste is so small, people are blown away and they have no idea how little waste is actually produced.
Oh yeah,
exactly. It's
exactly.
something like if you had a golf ball sized hunk of reactor grade uranium, that would be enough to cover your power needs for life. The amount of waste would fit in a 12-ounce soda can, and the radiation it emits would fall below background levels in like 300 years.
Yeah.
It's better to speak on those terms, individualize it. Take the sum and go, okay, well, when you divide it among all the people you're providing power to, yeah,
and all that waste, really, the only reason it's waste is because all of these treaties and regulations that prevent it from being reused. I mean, it's like you've got all this perfectly good nuclear material that you could run through and get more power out of, and you're just going to store it somewhere and just let it be.
Well, not all waste is fissile. Some of the quote waste unquote would be plutonium, and that certainly can be used. But there are the fission products. Basically, all the energy is spent from them. They're just giving off high energy radiation, but not not in a way that's really usable for generating power, because it would take so long for it to decay. But
well, I mean, I don't know all the science of it, but apparently what you can do is anything that's emitting radiation above the background level, you can actually mix it in with uranium or plutonium or something like that. And then there's some process where, it interacts with it and you can actually get more of the energy out of it in a useful form.
Oh yeah, Shane, it's also fun when people like to bring up Chernobyl as an example of why nuclear energy is dangerous, even though Chernobyl's been debunked multiple times.
It's an example of why socialism's dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, their reactor was crap. Despite what Stalker Shadows of Chernobyl likes to show, Pripyat's not that bad of condition. In fact, I remember reading somewhere that flat out said, there was no reason to evacuate Pripyat, but the Russian government said, nope, we got to do it anyway.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, I can
Chernobyl reactor
because that was the first time anything like that had happened. But I mean, it's like if you look at what we know about it today and what we know, I mean, really, you have to go like really in the depths of the building itself, with their little robots, because that's the area where it's too dangerous. The area around there, and I mean, people were fear-mongering, oh, nothing is going to grow there for millions of years, and like within a few years, it was already lush.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Pripyat, if anything, Pripyat is full of life. Yeah, it's just, there's actually, I recall correctly, there's actually a movement out there in Ukraine that's trying to get Pripyat reopened so people can go back, demolish, the fines and all that in the old buildings and rebuild, but the government is still telling them, nope, you can't go back there because, we haven't had confirmation from Russia yet. It's like, as it says, it's, as you said, it's proven safe. It's only inside the original site where it's the most dangerous, and that can easily be blocked off and all that. But nope, but for some reason, it's got to be blocked off.
Yeah, I mean, that's like Fukushima. I mean, it's really scary when you look at the amounts of radiation that their robots are getting when they're actually going, down in the flooded areas where, you have the melted down reactors, where they are. And I mean, just this scary amount of radiation that would like kill you in less than a second if you were there. But when they're operating those, they're like sitting like just outside that on the other side of the wall, and they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it always baffles me that people will form such a hardened political opposition to nuclear power when they know so little about it.
Oh yeah, and going back. Oh, sorry, but I was about to.
And when the people who do know a lot about it, like nuclear engineers and stuff, are saying, no, it really is safe and a tremendously good thing. If you don't know anything about it, take the word of somebody who does.
I like it when they take like all of these information about, how much of the radiation it is and compare it to bananas. They actually have what they call the banana equivalent dose. And it's like, okay, if you were sitting next to this number of bananas, then you'd be getting the same amount of radiation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because bananas have potassium, of course, and potassium's radioactive.
Everywhere.
Yeah, you dropped out again there, Chris.
I was about to say, radiation is everywhere. Contrary to what you see in movies, if you were to take a Geiger counter out, it would start ticking, every other step you took because radiation's everywhere. It all depends on the dose and what type of radiation you're exposed to.
And the time of exposure.
Yeah, that's another thing people also fail to realize too. Not all radiation is dangerous to humans. In fact, it's been proven that there's some levels of radiation that are actually good for you in small doses.
I think there's still debate about that. There's the debate about whether, and I forget the names of these models, but there's like one where you have the linear threshold model is what it's called, where it goes down and it crosses the line of no damage somewhere above zero. So there's a certain amount, that at least isn't harmful. The question is what happens below that? Does it stay at zero or does it actually dip below zero? And that's one I can't remember what it's called. But if it dips below zero, then that would mean that small amount of radiation is actually beneficial. And I don't think there's a consensus on which way that is yet.
But yeah. Oh, yeah, and Shane, going back to Fukushima, there was also that one incident where there was that one, I think he was Canadian. He was a Canadian nuclear physicist, and he did not have a political agenda. He was legitimately worried about, how the radiation could affect Japan and the rest of the world. So he did information, and he found out that there was no radiation fallout. And while there was, dangerous levels of radiation at the epicenter, it wasn't spreading. And he posted that, and everyone yelled at him saying he was part of the conspiracy.
Oh, he got death threats.
Yeah.
I think we covered it on the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, guys, it's 8:00. So final thoughts, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay.
We just got to blow it all up and start anew.
Mm-hmm. See you, Shane.
Well, what was that called? Anarcho-Armageddonist or something like that, which is just blow everything up and start over.
Sounds like a pretty damn good idea.
All right. Thanks to everyone who showed up and participated. Thanks to all my supporters.
Don't mention. And we'll see you next month.